And ego, I mean, we've all been around it. We've experienced it. We've had people that we've experienced it with. I mean, ego doesn't get you anywhere. And we all know it. We know it doesn't get you anywhere. You know that that's not necessarily the right path, but it kind of gets in that way. And it goes back to what you just said. If you're aware and you know that that's what's happening and your ego is starting to kick in, it's like, hey, ego, put it in check.
So I'm Joe Martin, and thanks for tuning in this week on Entrepreneurial Impact. Today, I've got George Mrad out of our Northern Virginia, Keller Williams, also with Metro Center. And I'm just really excited with George. He's got a distinct red door is his brand. So without further ado, George, who are you? Introduce yourself really quickly, and then just get into your journey.
Great. So my name is George Mrad. I'm the CEO and founder of Red Door Metro of KW Metro Center. Been doing real estate. It's my 22nd year this year. Have held various positions within the real estate sector, from running my own team to being a sales manager for the number 4 team in the nation. I was a team leader for quite a period of time within KW as well. So really have seen, different aspects. Gone through different stages of real estate, from high school to college to a master's, and now on to my PhD, as they say.
Well, those of you that are listening in, I'm bald, George is bald. And did you go bald? At least I went bald within my first year of real estate. When did you have that happen to you?
I've been bald 7 times, actually, believe it or not. Have really loved that program and do it every time we have the opportunity. And what's really great about it, I'm sure, Joe, as you know, is every single time that you do participate in it, you get something completely different out of it, depending on where you are in your life and business.
Absolutely. So George, what got you into real estate? So obviously real estate's, entrepreneur, small business owner, you eat what you kill. What was your journey getting into real estate? How'd you do that?
Well, it's kind of crazy because that was never really the intention. So I'm a local kid. I grew up in Annandale, Virginia. I went to George Mason University. While at George Mason University, I was always under the mindset of I was trying to figure out how can I put myself through school, work the least amount that I could, and still be able to provide for myself. So I became a personal trainer, best money per hour that I could do during the time. And I was kind of a physically fit guy. So I did that. And one of my clients was a real estate agent that was starting to become successful. And she just started to start her team, actually. And she had brought on her son's soccer coach. And I was her son and her husband's personal trainer. So I came on with them. I was actually about to get in the mortgage business when I was finishing up my degree to work for a family member and go into his mortgage business. And she presented me with the opportunity. And what really was the deciding factor was I was really able to work with people, and I was always a people person. So, and I was always a salesman. So I was like, hey, what a better way than be able to deal with people on the largest transaction of their life and be able to, prosper and hopefully, do well in it. And thankfully, it's been an amazing journey so far.
That's incredible. I asked that question mainly because I got into real estate because I answered a Craigslist ad. So I always ask that question because it's so fascinating to me, the different ways that people got into real estate. And a lot of times it's because of a friend or family member that said, hey, you'd be really good at this, and you took the leap of faith. So I commend you on that one, because a lot of people going into full-on commission can get a little scared. Let me ask you this question. What's the high point? So you've been in real estate over 20 years. If you were to pick one thing that you're most proud of, your highest point in your real estate career, what would that be?
Man, there's so many, it depends. I will have to say, I think this year, believe it or not, has probably been one of the most amazing, incredible years, because we set out on a very large goal that honestly, it's almost like one of those where you set the goal and it's almost so much that you don't understand how you're going to get to it, but you just kind of figure it out. And the beauty of it is we were able to hit our goal early, but the more joy out of that was the people here on my team, what they were able to get out of it. And that's been the most rewarding thing, to be really honest with you, because, and I know we say it and it's the KW theme of, you help them get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. But it is so abundantly true. And it's been so amazing because I'm watching them prosper and enjoy everything that they're able to, do and get, and take their families on vacations and do certain accomplishments. And to me, it's like I get more satisfaction from that, and that's been really amazing. And this year, the team has been able to hit their goals and then be able to do things in their personal life and for their families that, I have to say, the business had a lot to do with it. And that's been the real rewarding part for this year. It's been really fulfilling.
I think it's really cool because like whenever time you throw out that like big, hairy, audacious goal, the one that like scares the living heck out of you, you don't know how you're going to get there. I always equate it to, well, we're on the plane and we're going to kind of assemble the plane as it's going down, and hopefully there's enough pressure behind it that we assemble the thing before we hit rock bottom. But I think it's what's really cool about what's anchoring your motivation this past year is actually seeing people, because a lot of people don't actually commit to the journey of people development, so they never get to the end goal of like where you're at, of actually seeing it come to fruition and like it actually bloom. And I'd recommend anyone tuning into this episode is that like it does take time. Like you just heard George talk about seeing the entire team hit the goal, crush the goal, and then facilitate financial benefits to their personal life to attain those things. But that wasn't, George got into real estate a year ago, sold a bunch of homes, and then year two was this like amazing leadership guru. It took over 20 years to be able to have that delayed gratification of what it looks like to actually have impact with people's lives. And I think that's,
I mean, it's funny. I was having a conversation the other day, someone like this, and they're like, describe your real estate career. And I said, it's like pizza. I've been reinvented every year, 10 times a year, trying to figure out, pizza, sauce, cheese, some dough. And every single week, Pizza Hut has a new kind of pizza, a stuffed crust, a this and that, and everything else, trying to reinvent. And I think that's what we've done. I can tell you what we're doing today is not what we did yesterday. Our foundations, our morals, are things that our vision, our values are all the same. But this is a business that you're just ever growing and you're changing. And, some of the stuff I do today, I'm even like, man, am I really doing this right now? But it's what's working. And I think that's what's, the beauty of it is you kind of change with it as well, and that's been really a great thing. And now as we change and, the team has their input, you look back, once the dust settles, you're like, wow, look at where we are right now, which, very blessed, very, very blessed.
humbling.
Humbling, big time humbling, big time.
Let me ask you a different question too. So this one, I think a lot of people see the swan on water. It looks gorgeous on top, but don't ever see like the craziness that's going underneath the water. What was your lowest point? So like you've had success, and more often than not, you've had success, or otherwise you wouldn't be where you're at today. But what was like the most humbling part of your real estate career?
Humbling part of the real estate career. Taking guidance from those who are working with you. There are times where, I'm kind of on my path. I'm thinking this is the right way. And you're kind of, like you said, all that turmoil that's going on underneath the water. And, really sitting there and, my team members put me in place. And it happens a lot. And I welcome it because, I want to be a better version of George every day. And that's always my number one thing. And I think being able to put your ego to the side and be able to, really listen to those around you and really try to take in what they say and process it and see if there's a way to apply it. And that's been very humbling for me because there's a time in my life where, if I knew everything and no one knew as much as me and my way was the highway. And, there was a long time that my business kind of plateaued kind of at the same point consistently. And now that, I've really gone into a complete self-mastery mode, like right now, about trying to get better. So, at first it was a little bit humbling trying to get the feedback, even the good feedback along with the bad feedback. But I think it's about how you take that and how you process it. And I know, I think the team loves that idea is because we're an open environment of sharing, no matter who's it going to offend or who's it going to upset. And the whole process is for all of us to get better and move forward. So I'll probably say that was probably a pretty humbling, experience that is continuously evolving.
I think the cool part about that is the perspective, because the perspective, what you actually brought up was that taking advice from people on my team, but then you immediately made it into an action item that made yourself better around self-mastery, which I think a lot of people actually struggle with, is just actual when we talk about self-mastery, it's self-awareness, right? That like, do I have the perspective of myself and how I'm wired and what my tendencies are, and how that can actually cause a ceiling of my achievement. And the only way that I'm going to bust through that ceiling is to be self-aware enough to stop getting in the way and actually allowing some of that feedback that's viable. Like you said, not all feedback is good. Like you've got good and you've got bad feedback, right? And
Oh no, Joe, we'll leave the room. Like it'll be an intense conversation where we're like, we're going to go for a walk real quick and come back and try to come back. But when everyone's goal is the same, then it's not, because it's family. I mean, it's when your father tells you something, or your parent or your big brother or somebody like that tells you something in order to better you, at the moment you take it as, wow, offensive or something like that. But then sometimes when you process or you actually listen to it, there's validation in it, and I think being aware is half the battle with anything. And I think, the ones who are achieving this at a high level have even a greater, awareness about themselves and what's around them. And I'm still learning today, because I'm trust me, every day I'm getting a little bit more aware, and I always think it's enough, and you're always learning something else. So,
well, I give it two things, I think, and I commend you on this one, because a lot of people aren't self-aware enough. Is you got two challenging pieces that go into like self-awareness and self-mastery and moving towards it, is perspective, right? Around your ego. And what's funny about it is, if you're in like a coaching or conversation with somebody and you hit them with the word ego in the middle of it, it resonates with such a negative chord that you're like, oh yeah, you're just egotistical. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I go, well, no, the thing is that you believe your way is so good that you're unwilling to understand that there is probably another way to do it. And you're basically saying you're unwilling to let that feedback hurt your ego in order for you to get to that next level. And I think it's a very psychological thing, and you got to be really mature and self-confident to make sure it lands right.
and ego, I mean, we've all been around it. We've experienced it. We've had people that we've experienced it with. I mean, ego doesn't get you anywhere, and we all know it. We know it doesn't get you anywhere. You know that that's not necessarily the right path, but it kind of gets in that way. And it goes back to what you just said. If you're aware and you know that that's what's happening and your ego is starting to kick in, it's like, hey, ego, put it in check, go back. That's not the case right here. It's about getting better and getting to where we be. And I think when you have those successes, when you do that and you put the ego to the side, it gets a little bit easier every single time to kind of, whoops, oh, there it is again, put it to the side, know that that's not necessarily that's not the right, drunk monkey talking.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think it's definitely, especially when you've been self-sufficient, like especially someone it's like self-driven and like I don't need help from other people, and that like I have been successful, and then being able to take it and say, hey, okay, is this viable? Like, there's a great book by what is his, oh wow, this is gonna drive me up a wall. It's called Work and Life Principles by Ray Dalio. And they talk about, it's a huge, massive book, like it's probably 600 pages. But the best part about it is be so open to any type of option on how you could get somewhere, and to have that discussion from other people, because our perspectives are usually from our environment, our experiences, our parents, friends, family. And what we're looking for is the best way. I'm not looking for the right way, the wrong way. I'm looking for the best way. And when you can get to that ego checking to say, hey, what's the best way? It might be the most unlikely source on the team that hits you with like a right hook. And you're like, didn't see that coming, but that was actually the best option. And I think that's what we get deprived from as entrepreneurs, if we're not actually able to control that ego, that the best option might actually get overlooked because we're unwilling to hear that feedback.
Amen. Amen, brother. That's exactly. Amen.
So we're going through a shift. So I'm going to little pivot this from like your journey and all that kind of stuff. So people tuning in today, like if you were to give one piece of advice on the shifting market, George, right? Like some people, you got the sky is falling, Stuart Little, like, it's all coming to collapse. What am I going to do? And then there's the ones that say there's opportunity. You've been here long enough. So I'm going to ask you that question in your perspective. Like, what's the 1 to 3 things that in a shifting market that get you fired up that you would give to somebody else as like advice?
Well, first, what you said, this is the time to take market share, take things like I'm so excited about this market. I'm glad it's shifted. We just had our team meeting this morning, and You know, a lot of people, all I've heard is like, this has been the worst month, interest rates, all of this. And right now, we've had the best month we had in all of 2022 was the month of November, and we're not even halfway through.
That's
So,
incredible.
yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna, you know, we measure things a little bit differently, but you know, our GCI is going to be over 200K this month for the team, which is how we measure it. But in this market, you know, it's when the real skilled players, when you're able to really come and take market share. And I remember, you know, when we had our first downturn, my mentor, she doubled down on everything, and we literally went from 250 homes to 600 homes. And because
I want to
people
stop
really,
there. Hold on. Say that again, just for everybody listening that might have hit skip or whatever. What did you just say again?
we went from literally 250 homes to almost 600 homes during the town market. I was carrying, I think, anywhere maybe two or two and a half dozen listings at one time, trying to figure it all out. And we were rolling because that's when people really wanted to hear the expert and how we were dealing with the market. The market's going to do whatever the market's going to do. You know what I mean? You're not in control of it. All you can do is how quickly can I analyze it? How quickly can I react to it? How quickly can I take action? And that's something that I learned. And that's what we've been doing right now. And it's been phenomenal because now, you know, real estate is a cycle. And once you've gone through one cycle, you know how to work it. Always the second cycle, when you have to go through it again, you're able to make moves and to, you know, take on more and able to get more. And that's what we've been experiencing right now. Some of the things is the core values that we do on a daily basis. You can't get away from that. You know, the shiny penny routine of everyone saying, oh no, this is the new thing, or this is what it is. And then they get away from what got them there. You have to still do what gets you there. And I think what you do is you add little pieces depending on what's needed at the time, but you never get away from your core values and what your business is. I think another thing too, within this market, there's a lot of money to be made in different avenues within the real estate transaction. Whether you're helping somebody with an investment, a move up, you have to go find that buyer. The market we were in, you just kind of laid back, they all kind of came to you. Now is when you really go and you hunt for those buyers, and you hunt for the right buyers. One thing that was big for my team as we went into this year was we wanted to work with less people who were buying more expensive homes. And that was one of the main things that we kind of went after. And that's what really helped us, you know, this year kind of get to where we were, was really focus on a couple of core things, execute the things that you normally do, you know, that you've always done, your core values, and apply it as much as you can. And I mean, to me, this is the market where, what is your value proposition? What value do you really do? Can you look yourself in the mirror, give your presentation, and can you make yourself believe that you're the best agent for them? That's what I do. I know for a fact there is no better agent, no better team that can represent a buyer or a seller in this market than me and my team. And I'm going to explain to them why. And I'm going to exude the confidence to show them why. And I'm going to make them a believer. And this is the time where people are looking for that, because all the access noise, everybody's 7 cousins and 2 brothers who are real estate agents, and you know what I mean? That's all fine and dandy, but right now is when it really is going to matter for you. And I think when you're able to really convey that in the right way, I think this is the market where people are going to gravitate towards the people who are having success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think like when you're talking, what I hear you, there's a couple points there I want to hammer home for anyone like tuning in, is that there's also there's an idea of like being true to who you are, that like you got to define who your core values are, what your value proposition is, and like what place in the market do you serve the customer as a real estate professional. And you can't be a chameleon at this point. Like you actually have to define a sector and say like, I'm going to own it. That's what I'm known for. Because you got to stand out from the crowd. I think the other part that I really agree on this one, is that the past 2.5 years has been catching. You're literally going into a hunting, fishing type endeavor, and those that have the confidence, the skill set, the knowledge base to be able to come out and have some swag to be like, no, in a rocky sea, you need actual expert captains, right? That's what all you're doing is you're shepherding, or you're guiding people through a rocky sea, because they're seeing all this negative news. And quite frankly, like, you couldn't have a better time to buy a home, because you're going to see price reductions happening with, you're going to have a short-term interest rate challenge, but at the end of the day, what's your hold period?
And you got to become a better storyteller, Joe.
Yeah.
in this market, you have to be the better storyteller. And I think it's telling the story of explaining why. All people hear is rates are high, this is bad. Well, let's look at it. 6 months ago, I would have to pay 150,000 over to have a 2.5% interest rate. But right now I get to have inspections, I get to choose the home, maybe get some closing costs, and then I get to refinance. That's not a worse market. This is a better market. But it's all about that perspective, and it's about telling that story to make somebody believe that, to change that perspective, and you're able to do it.
Yeah, no, I think there's power in, like, human beings themselves are very emotional creatures, and you've got to make them feel good about their decision. And then the facts and figures behind it solidify the decision. But you, as the craft, the real estate professional, the consultant, how do you handle the reality, handle the feelings, the emotions, all that stuff, get them to feel good about their decision and move forward, and then solidify the decision with actual numbers that verify that, hey, I am making the right decision. So I think it's a package for anybody that wants to get through this and take out market share. Like, you got to be a great craftsman at that storytelling.
You're there to be a consultant, right? So really be the consultant. Before, we were order takers. They go out, they find the house, they want us to write. That's what we did. Now it's consulting them. Is this the right home? Is this going to be a good investment? How can we approach this? Where does it, really dissecting it and peeling the layers of that on.
So we've covered a lot, like, of your journey, market of the moment. Let me ask you a bigger question. What's the vision for Red Door Metro? Like, what are you trying to build towards? What are you inspired by?
Well, I'm inspired by, I want to be one of the smaller teams doing the most amount of business. So one of our big goals that we had last year, we had our Metro Center awards luncheon, and we had our things for the year. And one of the awards that we get is, who's made $1 million of GCI. And that's been, it's a big number. And several teams within our market centers all received the award. And one thing that I took notice is they were always large teams. So my goal right there, I pulled, my TL and our general manager, and I said, look, we're going to be up there with everybody else, but we're going to have the least amount of people. And my objective was, that means each of my people are getting, to where they want to be. So my goal is to have, a team of 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 agents eventually within 5 years, but every agent's making over $250,000. Like, that's what I want. I don't want, and it's weird. And as the evolution of the team has kind of gone about, we went after new agents, mid agents, older agents, trying to figure out what's the best mix. And, I want to take that person who's a B plus agent, and I want to make them an A plus agent. The one who's an A agent, I want to make them an A plus agent, kind of take them to a next level, having high-minded conversations, allowing them to come in, bring in their ideas, incorporate their ideas, and figure out what's the best way to them, where they can have their own business and their umbrella fits under Red Door Metros. And this year so far, all my agents have made 6 figures. We have one of them, who is approaching the 300K mark. And my goal is to make every single one of my agents do that, where they are their own mini team and they are doing it. And, they're all behind this brand of Red Door Metro. It's not George Mrad real estate. It's nothing like that. It's a brand that eventually, I can step away and they can take over and have that 7th level team and running it just like the dream says, just like the MREA book. Like, that's eventually where we want to be. But if they're each making $250,000 or $300,000 or $500,000, and that means I'm doing pretty well. So that's why, for me, is my main focus. My main focus is to, liberate them, because, like, this year, when you're talking about scary stuff, I'll tell you, Joe, my coach challenged me at the beginning of this year to give up all my resale business. She said, I don't want you taking any more. And I was like, what are you talking about? No way. Like, that's my bread and butter. She's like, you like your developers, you like your builders, stick with them, but all your resale business, give it to your team. And that was a big thing for me, because listings were always my thing. I would always give the buyers away, but I would always handle the listings. And if I told you that we had the best year, we're up 44% from last year, and I barely had to list a house. You know what I mean? That's, to me, it's like phenomenal. We're ahead of our goal, everything like that. And it's about getting that uncomfortableness. So eventually my goal is to be able to be removed from the team. The team is running everyone has their own business running within the team, but everyone's collective goal is to make Red Door Metro the brand that anyone, if they have a service of real estate needs, whether we buying, selling, or investing in real estate, that we're going to be the right resource for them.
Man, I thought you were so fired up about like getting other people into production, like you just like lit up, like your energy.
And being a TL is what taught me that. Like, that's why I said this whole thing of trying to figure out which way you're going to go. I mean, I tell my GM Kate all the time for our Metro Center is best job I ever had in my life was being a TL. The best job, because you got to empower people, you got to have them like expand their limits, their things, and you got to see people grow. And and I was like, okay, what if we can apply this to our own team? And how can we apply this to having my own team? And there was no better satisfaction. So what I'm really trying to recreate is kind of, having that team and just be that team leader role to motivate them, educate them, help them get better, help them realize where they are. And if I do that, they're going to do the same for me. And it's going to make me a better leader,
So I love it. And the team leader role is probably the best unpaid MBA you could ever receive, right?
I promise, Kate, I would have mentioned that, but yeah, it is.
So here's the insight. It's funny you bring this up because I was on site down in Roanoke last week, and I was talking to one of the mega teams there about like, what are your job duties? What's your org chart look like? How do you send stuff out? And I go, I want you to stop thinking about your gross income, like GCI. I want you to start thinking about your dollar per hour. And my question to you is like, what's your highest and best use? So for you, you said this, but I'm gonna say it more directly for those listening about like, how do you scale a business? Is your goal is dollar per hour? Like, how do you increase your dollar per hour? And if you've got over 20 years of relationships with builders, with step-up buyers, with whatever you want to call it, like your actual gift in the team is the relationship. How do you lock down the relationship within the phone call for lead gen and then pass that off to somebody else? Because what happens if the rainmaker realizes my highest and best use is to lock down qualified leads, and everybody on Red Door Metro gets these qualified leads. So when they meet for coffee or in the office for a needs now, whatever the thing is, they're already qualified. Now I just have to figure out what kind of house they want, what kind of financing they're at. And you can literally give that gift because you got 40 hours of lead gen to just set appointments that are qualified, whereas everybody else is actually going out and doing all that work. And that's actually how you give people a life worth living, because now they're learning, but you're still utilizing the one thing that's actually the highest and best use of you and your skills.
And then I get to hand them off, the team gets them, they get to go work them. Then I go out and try to make more relationships. Like one of our big goals for 2023 is to establish more relationships with different investors, builders. Like that's where my bread and butter, because if we can bring in the listings, then they're going to have opportunities. They're going to have more ways to make different, more ways and more opportunities to make money. And that's right. And that's why I think that's the growth part about it, right? That's when you're going from E to P, Joe, right? When you're sitting there and you're thinking, no one else can do it. Now, instead of me having to run around, go to a house, make sure things are getting corrected, fixed properly, showing up for a home inspection, my agents are able to do that. And I'm able to go out and try to make another relationship with a builder or a foreman and try to make them into somebody who's a repeat business for us. Nice. Absolutely.
And I think like that's the gift. Like, how do you, it's at least been my journey, and I'm hearing it through you at this, is like, how do I give the gift of things that I've already accomplished to others to make them better versions of themselves? That like, there is no challenge in George learning how to be a better, like you already know how to list a house. Like that's not an accomplishment, but getting 10 other people to know how to list a house and be a top listing agent is something that you could be competitively challenged by.
And it's having their success. It's weird. I have kids, I have two boys, and when they're successful in something, there's no better satisfaction. The agents on the team, but it's almost the same feeling. You know what I mean? Like I can get a check for 25 grand and they could have gone and closed a $200,000 townhouse and it's their first deal and I'm making a couple $1,000s and I'm getting more satisfaction and joy from that than making that big paycheck. Because to me, it's also like an investment. I'm planting seeds everywhere. If we have enough seeds growing, we're going to have enough growing at the same time that you're going to be able to succeed. And if I could teach them how to continuously do that, I'm able to go away. I'm able to go do things that I normally couldn't do. Like this year, I was able to go away for 21 days with my father to Greece and Lebanon. I've never in my life been able to do that. And you know what? We still had one of the best months we've ever had while I was away. And I didn't even sell one home. Like, that's where you almost got to let faith take over a little bit and believe and really try to strive for it. And once you get a little taste of it and you start doing a little bit more and a little bit more, I mean, that's when you end up, I think moving up the ranks and going up, through the 7 levels. I think the hardest levels are 1 through 4, 1 through 5. And once you hit that and you start growing it, all of a sudden, boom, 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 it kind of just happens because you're kind of used to it and you're conditioned for it.
And it's a compounding success, right? That, like, when you look at growth, it's not linear, it's exponential. It's the hockey curve thing that, like, there's this interesting mindset of like, hey, I'm going to go for 5 years at like the same slow growth. And then all of a sudden something clicks and you go like this. And no one ever understands that it's not like, hey, if I put in 40 hours, I get this X output. It's that you got to keep hammering the skill. And eventually at some point, all of it comes into alignment and it just blows up.
That's right.
In a good way, not in a bad way. But hey, George, last thoughts, right? So, like, people going into real estate, people in small business, entrepreneurial impact, just throughout your life and the people you've gotten there, like, what's some takeaways just from being an entrepreneur? Give me 3.
There's 3, but let me tell you the one. And this is the question I've been waiting to hear from you. And this has been, I think, my biggest change for me in my life, probably in the last like 2-3 years. What's your purpose? We were blessed enough. ROP Shane had brought in for all of us Brian and Gabrielle, who wrote The Purpose Factor. It's an amazing book. They brought him in, they talked to us. He gave me the book. He gave us all a copy of the book. I went on vacation. I read about half the book, called from Mexico, called Brian and said, I want to hire you as my coach for 6 months. And I hired the author because I was like, purpose, we need fuel for our fire. And as I went through it, trying to figure out what's my purpose in my life, I get more satisfaction from seeing others grow. I find, and him and I started going on every other week, 2-hour call, diving deep into it. And the one thing that I discovered about myself that was the game changer and that really changed everything for me exponentially was that I learned to bet on myself. And I mean, I want us to listen. We hear this all the time, but I'm talking about bet on you. And we go through our life, we get told by other people what to do, how we should act, what should we do. Even a journey, like you were just talking about, like getting into real estate. Sometimes people pick a job because it's paying them $1,000 more in a year than the other job, but that's not really what they're passionate about, right? We always end up maybe listening to somebody else's vision for ourselves versus betting on ourselves and really saying, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to do it. I don't care what my parents say or my family member. This is what I believe in. I'm going to bet on me. And if I fail, well, then I failed on me. Because if I'm following someone else's dream and someone else's path, I'm already failing. I'm not winning. It was, I don't know if you have seen it before, Joe, but Jim Carrey gave a commencement speech at a college and he talked about his father, and he talked about his father was a funny guy. His father always wanted to be a comedian, but instead he became an accountant and he worked this regular job for 25 years. And then they laid him off and he was completely heartbroken. And he's like, man, he was heartbroken for somebody else's dream. Why not? If he went out, maybe he could have been the actor or he could have been the comedian. And, he could have been the first Jim Carrey versus the second. And why? Because he didn't bet on him. And that's the one thing that I, really going throughout my whole life, I always seeked opinion, not counsel. And I would always get everyone's opinion. And it'd always be the furthest thing away from what I thought. And then at the end of it, when it didn't work, I'm like, you know what? I should have just listened to what I thought in the beginning because I think it would have worked. And when I came to KW, it was a very difficult time in my life. And KW was kind of a savior for me, the environment, the culture, and everybody here. And that was the first time that I bet on me in my entire life, betting on me, saying, okay, this is going to be my path. I want to come and take this. My first job was KW. I never had a job before becoming a TL at KW. Like, I always worked for myself, right? And I gave myself to this and I bet on myself and I said, this is going to be the right path. I go to a mega camp. I see Althea Osborne sponsor our country. I said, I can do that. And we were able to launch Canada, Montreal, from the very first mega camp we ever attend. Why? Because I said, bet on myself. Why not? Maybe this will work. We started, left the TL position in management and came and started a team. What do I know about this? And the way I started in the beginning, I was like, okay, I can go and call Expire, it's called FISBOs, and do all this. How can I make the best bang for my buck? Let me go after a builder that I can get repetitive business. I wasn't even in new construction 5-6 years ago. But I said, what am I really good at is relationships. How can I make a relationship with somebody, make someone money, have it beneficial for both of us, and continue? And I bet on us. And this is what we've become. And I look back and I have regret because, I'm 47 years old almost now. And I started betting on myself just 3-4 years ago. What would have happened if I was betting on myself at 25? I mean, my God, I can't even, it gives me chills. And my number one goal right now is anyone who comes into contact with me, whether it be my kids, my team members, people in our office, anyone who encounters me, I want to make sure if they ever leave me that they can say, you know what, George made it a point to have me bet on myself. I want to remember in this moment, I want to hear George's words, bet on you. And if you fail, guess what? If you learn from it, no problem. You fail, no worries. But what's worse is failing someone else's dream and not betting on that. And that's something that, I want to do that. And I feel that's what's been portrayed to my team this year. And like I said, I mean, my agent that's been with me now, my right hand, 3 years, her business from last year has increased 106%. Like that's
a story.
And she's betting on herself. And I'm loving watching them bet on themselves. And if there's anything you can take away too, Joe, just remember in the back of your head, George saying, bet on yourself. That's what I want anyone to take away. Just take that chance.
I love it. I think it's a great way to end this episode because I firmly, in a different way, I've got the same belief system I would rather bet on myself and fail than never take the action and live with the regret of what could be, right? I can live with what I've actually done and what I can control. But if I can control an outcome and I never actually took the action and bet on myself, that's something that's actually detrimental. And that's regret's one of the worst feelings in the world, because at least if you try, you're like, hey, I left it all out there and it just wasn't meant to be. So I moved on to the better thing for myself, going back to betting on yourself and fulfilling the vision that you want for your life. So George, I just want to say thank you for today. You're a busy guy. You're slinging a lot of house with your team. Thank you so much for pouring into this episode. And for those of you tuned in, thank you for listening to Entrepreneurial Impact. We'll be on next week as well for next Wednesday. And have a great rest of your day.